fudaka lano yanda ko ganama re baba ko sakame yanu ku ganama ya patala shir asar jabadu ya gurba.
I would like to thank Dr. Mosisa Aga and everyone who played a role organizing this conference for allowing time to discuss film, media, and education. My co-panelists and I will try to make a case for the importance of these topics and their relevance to the question of this conference. The question of this conference is Paths of Oromo National Empowerment in the 21st Century. What I will do now is quickly introduce the panel and the panelists. Then each of us has prepared a short presentation, and then after all four presentations, we hope to have some time for questions and conversation. My name is Stephen Thomas, and I'm a professor of literature and culture at Wagner College in New York. I also serve on the editorial board for the online magazine Ogina Oromo Arts and Diaspora that was created by the International Oromo Youth Association in 2008. Some of you also probably know my wife, Maya Tessema's parents, Alma's and our dearly departed Tessema. This is my 5th time attending an OSA conference. The first time was in 2007, and that is when I first met Mohammed Ademo when he was a young college student at the University of Minnesota in Duluth, fresh off the boat from Oromo. He has now just completed a double master's degree in journalism and international relations at Columbia University in New York. And I think everyone in this room is aware of the innovative work he has done creating the online O Pride newspaper and the role he played in Al Jazeera's recent coverage of Oromo issues. His presentation, Media Outreach and the State of Journalism Among the Oromo, will explain O Pride's approach to journalism and the challenge ahead. The second time I attended OSA was in 2008, when I gave a presentation on the problem of the American culture industry for Oromos and the importance of literature and media for overcoming America's political bias towards Ethiopianism. In that presentation, I talked about Daba Wayesa's film, The Fallen Beats, even though I had never met Daba before. Just 5 minutes after that presentation, Daba was formally introduced to me, and I think everyone here already knows Daba's history as a novelist, playwright, and now journalist for the Oromo division of Voice of America. What you may not know is all the work he has been doing recently, not only to make short films in Oromia, but also to teach young people there so that they can make their own films. His presentation, Hollywood and Finfinnewood, will talk about that. And I hope you understand that Finfinnewood is an allusion to other emergent film industries such as Bollywood in India and Nollywood in Nigeria. In my own presentation today, I will speak about a class I taught at Wagner College that Daba helped me to organize. This class used internet technologies to connect 25 American students with 25 students in Ethiopia. Near the end of that course, Mohammed Ademo, who's speaking next, also gave a presentation to my class about O Pride. Immediately after Mohammed's presentation, one of my top students, Arietta Lajka, asked me if O Pride offered an internship. She has been working for O Pride for the past 2 months, and some of you may have read her article on President Obama's problematic policies in Africa. By the way, I just wanted to mention this, Arietta's family are Muslim Albanians from Montenegro who immigrated to the United States in the 1980s. So if you know anything about the history of Albania and the former Yugoslavia, you can appreciate her interest in being here today. Her presentation will reflect upon the image problem that Oromos have in the mainstream media and film industry. For the people, we're going to have a PowerPoint presentation soon, so if you want to go ahead and lower the thing. Oh, it's there? Okay. So those are the 4 panelists. Our panel is titled Media, Film, and Education, a Transnational Approach to the Oromo Nationscape. Mohammed will focus on the media, Daba on the film, me on the education, and then Arietta will tie everything together and discuss all 3. Before I turn the microphone over to Mohammed, I'd like to give a brief explanation of the term in the panel's title, nationscape. It is a word I made up. in response to the anthropologist Arjun Appadurai's analysis of globalization. In Appadurai's view, since the post-colonial 1960s and 70s, the old assumptions about ethnic and national identities no longer hold in light of migration, multinational capitalism, new media technologies, and the ideologies of freedom, democracy, and human rights. He explains that a proper analysis of our globalized world needs to take into account ethnoscapes, mediascapes, technoscapes, financescapes, and ideoscapes. In other words, for him, ethnic identities are not simply territorial, and culture is not something we can merely map onto a landscape. After all, we are all here in the capital of the United States, imagining the future of a nation that is elsewhere. Thinking about globalization and various scapes, Appadurai stresses the importance of taking into account the complex and sometimes contradictory relationship between group identities, the transfer of new technologies such as the internet, the rapid deployment of finance capital, and fantasies of a new and different future generated by television. For example, the Canadian hip-hop group OSA, appropriating an American Revolutionary War slogan from 1776, "Give me liberty or give me death," to imagine Oromo freedom over 2 centuries later. Appadurai's point is that nations are not just political entities, they are imagined entities. They are not just politically decided, they are culturally produced, and hence my argument for you is to consider the culture that produces them and the challenges for Oromo culture in the context of Wall Street, Hollywood, Al Jazeera, Minnesota's Little Oromia, and the internet. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. This is my first time speaking at OSA, and I'm usually a behind-the-scene guy. So I don't really like being up here talking down to you guys, but hopefully we'll have time to have a conversation at the end. But as you can see, I'll be talking about 3 different things, not necessarily in that order, but about O-Pride, which is a project that we've started in 2008. Journalism outreach, some of the work that we've done to take the Oromo story beyond our radios and our websites so that other people can know about Oromo, and sort of continuing the work that OSA has done, but in a much smaller, non-academic setting. But I will also comment on where the Oromo media is and maybe some of the things that we need to do to get the Oromo story to be told. I won't be able to say all the things that I want to say because this is such a short time we're given, but you can get in touch with me through our website, email, or phone number. Just briefly as a background, the way I see it, there are 3 types of media organizations in Ethiopia at the moment. One is the state-run media, the other is the opposition media, and then what I like to call the rest. The state-run media is sort of the only free press in Ethiopia, free in the sense that they are free to scrap all the journalistic ethics and everything that this profession was supposed to do and just play being a megaphone for the government. In that you can get in a way of Walta Information Center, Ethiopian Radio, Fana, and of course the newer ones like Oromia, TV Oromia and others. And then the second one is the opposition media, which is really, which presents the narrative that is really the antithesis of what the government is doing, not necessarily following what journalism should be, writing stories the way it should be done or covering the country the way it should be, but really presenting an opposite narrative to the government, and that you can get in the name of ISAT and Ethiopian Review and many others. And then the third, sort of what I call the rest, is the Western media. Most of them are based in Finfinne, in other places, in others. Some of them are self-censoring because they are scared of openly writing critically of the government. Others are exiled. And of course, the Western media is Eurocentric. And the rest that are not on this list are the activist media who are doing activism, citizen journalism and activism in a mix of the two. Now, when we talk about Oromo media, I wanted to divide it into two. In Oromia, there is only one organization or a media platform that projects itself as an Oromo media. That is the Oromo Radio and Television Organization, the Bata Radio fi Televisioni Oromia. Now, I understand that their role is not different from that of ETV, but as some of you guys might have seen, they've done some very interesting work on cultural programming, on art and entertainment, in producing documentaries of Oromo history in places like, if you've seen recently, there was a documentary about Chalanko in some of these historical places where they are building monuments. And then, of course, they do a very extensive coverage of some Oromo holidays, the one that they like. In a way, I look at it as a glimpse of home for the rest of us who are exiled and longing for this home, even if that is through a distorted lens. Now in the diaspora, where we could have done a lot more given the technology and the things that we can do with all the resources that we have, what exists is a lot of fragmented voices here and there in a way of Muhammad Ahmad Yassin, Oromo TV, who drove 18 hours from Minnesota. He has done a wonderful job. He has done a wonderful job over the last 2 decades, trying to be the only really voice that is persistent in doing this work over the years. Some of us actually started working with Oromo TV in fall off and took up as an interest. And then, of course, there are others like Yantu, News Online, Gada.com, and then obviously in the last couple of years, we've got a lot of radios who are just opening up every now and then thanks to the technology. But I also, the biggest challenge they face, obviously, is censorship. They're not reaching the audience that they are trying to reach, which is the 40 million Oromos that we talk about that are really deprived of information in that country, and their only source of information is these government megaphones. To get over the censorship and reach that audience, they obviously have limited capacity in terms of manpower, and also they operate with a shoestring budget. Obviously, some of the challenges that they face is partisan affiliations with our many political groupings that don't seem to end. In some of these affiliations are real, and others are imagined. In most of all, I think the biggest problem that I've seen, especially with blogs and websites that are open here and there, is most of it is aggregation-based, copy-pasting things from here and there and just publishing press releases. I'm not saying anything is wrong with that, but I think we can do more to enhance the quality. Now, I've criticized others in what have we done with O-Pride. O-Pride started in 2008, as I said, with a really simple mission to give a voice to the voiceless. At the core of our belief is that every voice deserves to be heard. And how is our model different from some of the organizations that I talked about? We make a very concerted effort to differentiate news from opinion. And when we get opinion in analysis pieces, we make sure that it is really smart. It is grounded in facts, just like any other academic paper. It has enough nuance and context so that those who flybys who don't know about Oromo or the challenge that people face in Ethiopia can understand, given the context. And most of all, what we've done over the last 3 years especially is we've moved away from the aggregation model, and we produce original content by our contributors in our staff. In above and beyond, we try to engage with our readers because news has changed. As you know, when you see me walking around with a mobile phone, there are people waiting to get those updates, and that's sort of how we engage. We see our role as sort of that of an intermediary between home and exile, whereas we covering community events like OSA, in the rally that was held at the White House, so that people in other parts of the world and also Oromia can see. And we also sometimes get our friends in Oromos who are visiting Oromia to write blogs, and a case in point is my good friend Dr. Galane Gamachisa, who was doing her research extensionship in Finfinne, in Dambidolo, where she spent filing weekly observations of life in Oromia, really. Sometimes we forget that people live there and we get hung up on these politics. But these people have challenges that are non-political. In writing about those things, like, having a lot of wounded people at hospital or sick people at hospital and not having enough beds to help them. And then above and beyond that, we also watch the watchdog. There are a lot of, as I said, media organizations based in Addis writing for the Western audience, where they sit in Finfinne or anywhere else in that country and thinking of how do we make an average Joe in rural Minnesota care about a story in Oromia, in such a far-flung place that they can't even find on a map. How do they make them care? And that's the lens through which they write these stories. But they get it wrong more often than not. And we've done that for ISAT, and we've also done for Washington Post and many others. Obviously, we don't have an office. We look at the internet as our home, as our office, and much more. I'll skip this part. Steve is looking at me. I'll skip this. So sort of how does this Oprite thing work? So we are a team of two people, and most of the time just one person doing a lot of the work, but we have contributors, and now more recently we have even non-Americans, one Eritrean and of course Albanian working for us, doing the work that we do, but we also have contributors and volunteers in Canada, Europe, Ethiopia, and across the US. It is unfortunately an unpaid work. It's a lot of time consuming, and it's very challenging because forget the fact that I stayed up last night to write a story about a killing that took place yesterday in Kofale and Wabe, where 11 Oromos were killed. And about 46 or more were wounded. And this morning when I woke up to hate emails, people just picking out little things that we might have gotten wrong. It is challenging because we have to get it right for people to take us seriously. Fast forward. So how do we get out of this problem? So I talked about fragmentation and lack of quality and lack of finances to support us to do better work. So the way forward, I think there is only one way forward. If people liked what they saw on Al Jazeera, it did not come overnight. It took years of work. It only happened because people knew the work that we've done with Oprite. So what we need to do is we need to do our homework before we ask others to help us. And we are working on creating a pan-Oromo media organization that is owned by an Oromo, by Oromos, not by one Oromo, but by all of you guys, run by journalists who are trained or who will be trained for this. And our goal is, okay, we've already created a voice, but we need to amplify this voice, including the voice that exists. So one way we're going to do that is by pulling some of these websites and radios into one place so that there is a concerted effort where we can produce content on an ongoing basis. And we're going to involve everybody. People can, if people are interested in what we're doing or what I've said today, reach out. We are looking for creating fundraising board members and also looking for members who can sustain this year to year. But most of all, we don't have institutions. And a lot has been said over the last day and a half about building civic institutions. And if Oromo has won so many battles and so many wars, there is one war that we lost, and we lost miserably. That is in the media. And I, as an Oromo, feel ashamed to call myself an Oromo when the third largest language group in Africa does not have one independent newspaper. And I challenge you all to take that home and think about it really seriously. If you don't have a media, you can't tell your story. It's as if a child, even a child, a newborn, cries when it comes out to a new environment because she doesn't know how to say that I'm sick or I need food. If you don't have a media, you can't even cry. Your voice is muzzled in the country, and you are misusing technology or not using it very well in the diaspora. I think it's something that we need to step back and think about. And I'll leave you with this. The great African writer Chinua Achebe said, "Until the lions have their own historians, the history of the hunt will glorify the hunter." Now, the work OSA has done in rewriting the falsified Ethiopian history, we've covered enough ground, we have enough books. But there are also other stories that need to be told, and we need to reach out. We need to stop doing the conference for Oromos. We need to stop doing the meetings for Oromos. We need to stop doing the radios for Oromos. We need to reach out. We need to tell our story to others and also know how to frame our stories. You don't go to an Arab and tell them the same thing you will tell an American. You have to look at the geopolitical work and talk to people based on what they want to hear or how they can help you or where your two interests align. Now, Chinua also said that once he realized that the African story was not told, he said, "I decided to be a writer." And I had to be a historian, even though he was not one by training. It is not one man's job. We can't do this alone. And OSA did not do it alone. The Oromo freedom fighters did not do it alone. It is not one person's job. And it will require every Oromo's involvement. But it is something that has to be done. We've done enough to over the years, but we are getting tired. And people also have many dreams, including the American dream, where they can go to Ivy League universities and get well-paying jobs. We can easily do those things, but this has to be done. Nobody else is doing it. In the Oromo story is yet to be told. For the average American, for the average European audience to hear us, and I think we need to focus on that, and I thank you very much. I apologize.
Akkam ooltan. Namoota kaan karaa irratti wal argaa turre warraan waliin arginiini nagaan siniif haa ta'uun jedha. Akkam ooltan. Egaa afaan Ingiliziitiin nan dubbadha. Sila afaan Oromootiin dubbadhe gaarii ture. Thank you, Dr. Moses Aga and other OSA conference organizers for giving us this opportunity. I also would like to express my gratitude to our panel organizer and my friend Steve Thomas, and also other friends who believed in effectiveness of film, art, and media in creating affirmative social values and shaping the life of society. Especially Dr. Steve has been with me all the time since we knew each other in 2008 in seizing the opportunities and facing the challenge in realizing this vision. He has contributed a great deal to our efforts. While I was a student in a middle and high school, I developed a deep love and passion for literature and art of various forms. Subsequently, the passion expanded to film and media, as you know. In my long venture, I have published 2 novels and then wrote stage plays, screenplays, and made short films. And I've been Voice of America's international broadcaster and editor for the last 17 years. And why I'm saying this is, this motive of doing this project, came out of my experience and my encounters. I studied, what I did was, during this move, it's long years, and I had developed such a deep feeling that stories told through media and the arts were the best tools to instill positive values in human hearts and bring about social redemption in Ethiopia or wherever in the world. And I studied and inspired by the impact of film, television, and other media products on the social, cultural, and political lives of peoples in many parts of the world. However, I was also mindful that there were almost none Oromo and only very few Ethiopians who had an opportunity to equip themselves with proper education of filmmaking and TV production. Many years later, even today, the large majority of talented young people in Ethiopia, especially those from the Oromo and other disadvantaged groups, are limited to an amateurish level of production due to the lack of appropriate knowledge and skill in the field. So I was convinced that creating training and production opportunities were critical to effectively use those tools in Ethiopia and other parts of Africa. Then after thorough research and consultation with like-minded friends, we established Sun-described communications in Ethiopia for the purpose. The initial focus of Sun-described communications is to meet the need for the world-class training in filmmaking, TV production, and performing arts in Oromia, so that eventually Oromia becomes the film TV expertise center for Ethiopia and other East African countries. This project will also provide additional incentives to national and international film productions in choosing Oromia as their location of choice for filming in the future. So for today, let me focus on one of our many activities, building synergy between local and international filmmakers by creating networking opportunities through workshops and short-term trainings on all aspects of filmmaking, TV production, and performing arts. At the beginning, from the fourth week of November 2011 to January 2012, Sun-Describe had conducted a one-month workshop on screenwriting for over 50 amateur writers. The workshop was led by Dr. Steve through Skype communications and other local instructors who were present in person. Meanwhile, I established connection with Guy Moon, an award-winning film music composer in Hollywood through a friend. In our first conversation in his studio in LA, he watched my short film, The Fallen Beats, and developed a deep interest in Sun-Describe's vision and activities. In a few months of our continued conversation, he offered me to organize a team of Christian film experts in Hollywood to travel to Finfinne to conduct a filmmaking workshop in collaboration with Sun-Describe Communications and Mekane Yesus Seminary. I gladly accepted that offer. Tasfai Makonnen, the director of my first stage play, Dukana Nduba, and currently the manager of Sun-Describe Communications, I took charge of organizing the workshop in Mekane Yesus Seminary campus in November 2012. As promised, Guy Moon and other 6 film professionals from Los Angeles met with us in Finfinne and engaged in a workshop by giving lecture, mentoring the trainees on various aspects of filmmaking. They also led a hands-on training on the production of a short film, Yadani, written by Fraol Balai, one of our female trainees. In general, over 60 artists took part in the workshop or were extremely eager, excited about the training, the workshop. And also it was published on Ethiopian Herald, November 26, 2012, under Society section. Subsequently, in the spring semester of 2012, SunDescribe Communications had facilitated an online specialized film analysis class entitled Movies, Media, and Global Citizenship. In collaboration with Wagner College based in New York, this program was initiated and conducted by my friend, Dr. Steve. This is the topic of his presentation, so let me leave to him for details. Currently, SunDescribe is running a special filmmaking training by local instructors for over 30 students grouped into 6 teams, 5 students on each team to make 6 short films in 3 months. Our next bigger but challenging task will be establishing a formal program in film and television that provides a comprehensive and integrated study in the theory, creative, and the technical aspect of filmmaking and television. All components of SunDescribe's vision have been carefully planned, coordinated, and so that all local and international stakeholders will be encouraged to create synergy and substantiate network to continuously learn from each other and support each other in training, production, exhibition, and marketing projects. So please welcome who are interested in this project, Galatoma.
All right. In my introduction, I have discussed some of Arjun Appadurai's theory about globalization and its concepts, ethnoscapes, technoscapes, mediascapes, financescapes, and ideoscapes. By the way, just in case you're interested, I've also published an essay on globalization and film titled The New James Bond and Globalization Theory and Inside and Out. The question I'd like to raise today is about the nature of education in light of globalization, the mutuality of interest across national borders, as well as the conflicts. My hypothesis is that the theory and practice of education today is not simply about the transfer and development of skills, because it is also very much enmeshed in the somewhat contradictory interplay of technologies, media, finance, ideologies, and cultural identities, all of which are transnational phenomenon that have little respect for national borders. The class I did last semester brought together 25 students in the United States and 25 students inside Ethiopia. And what I want to do today is tell you how we organized this class. As Daba has already explained, he arranged a series of workshops in Finfinne to train young people in the art of script writing, directing, editing, and production. For the students in Ethiopia, my class was part of this series of workshops that had already been going on for the whole year before my class even started. And Daba already explained to you his partnerships with individuals from Hollywood. Hence, the one class at Wagner College in New York was just one node on a larger network of global relations. The other nodes of that network included the private film company based in Addis Ababa, SunDescribe Communications. It also included the non-governmental organizations Gudina Tumsa Foundation, the Mekane Yesus Seminary, Rift Valley College, as well as Daba's friends in Hollywood, and my own connections through OSA and IOYA. I should mention that part of this global network is the International Lutheran Church Association. My college, Wagner, was founded as a Lutheran seminary in 1883, though it stopped being a seminary in 1928. It is now a purely secular college with no formal religious affiliation. Still, it was my school's Lutheran heritage that made me think about the connection to Mekane Yesus. I mention all of this to point out to you the many different local and international organizations that are all in the background for just this one simple class. The subject of my class was film criticism and the topic of globalization. Let me explain what happened before the class even started. First and most important, we had somebody on the ground in Finfinne, Tesfaye Mekonnen, a highly trustworthy and reliable man who coordinates all the Sandscribe communications activity there. Several months before the class, we provided his office with several copies of a textbook on film criticism and another textbook on globalization, as well as DVDs of all the movies. We then worked with the administration of Mekana Yesus Seminary to use their library and their classroom that had internet capability and projection equipment. Wagner College provided special software called WebEx, which was designed for multinational corporations to hold meetings online. All of the students in Ethiopia emailed me their email addresses, and Wagner College gave them online Wagner identities so that they could use the school's online course management system. Those of you in the audience who teach college now probably have used such course management systems yourself, such as Blackboard, WebCT, or Moodle. Large universities often brand their own versions. Then, during the semester, each week, all the students watched the same movies and they read the same texts. The class was intended to introduce students to the basics of film analysis, and we began with classic American and European cinema, but because of the global nature of the class and the connection to Ethiopia, the students also read theory about globalization. The last 4 weeks of the class focused on how the global film industry represents Africa in general and Ethiopia in particular. Once per week, I gave a lecture that I recorded and put on YouTube so that everyone could watch it whenever they had time. All of the texts and hyperlinks were accessible via the online course management system. Then once per week, the two classes met by way of the online WebEx conferencing software. WebEx is like Skype, but much better. The American students could ask questions and offer opinions, and then the students in Ethiopia could do the same, and they could listen to each other. In addition, I divided all of the students into smaller online groups. Each group was half American students and half Ethiopian students. Each week, using the course management system software, the students would write their opinion of the film and the textbooks. Everyone in their group could see what the others wrote, and they could respond to each other so that the Americans and Ethiopian students could share ideas and engage in conversation online. So that is how the course worked. Now let me explain how this transnational model of education is different from the traditional international model. In the traditional international model, a university student in one country travels to another country to study there for a year. This is the Fulbright model. The relationship is simple, and you can draw a straight line, right? You can draw a straight line from the school in one country to the school in the other country. The problem with this model for Oromos is that the Oromos are not represented in this international scenario. A line between the American school and the Ethiopian school is subjected to the political and economic concerns of the United States and Ethiopian governments. Notably, the Ethiopian government is not especially interested in developing a free and open media, and it does not fully represent the diversity of its peoples. So, instead of this traditional model, we opt for a transnational approach, and therefore, instead of a straight line between two schools, what you must imagine is a multiplicity of lines among different NGOs, private companies, private schools, and individuals. Hence, the class is produced by this network of relations. I just want to add one thing to my presentation. This morning, when I was eating breakfast, I was reading the new issue of the Journal of Oromo Studies, and I noticed that, that this transnational model might be especially in sync with the Oromo form of government. So I was noticing Bonnie Holcomb in her first article in that issue talks about how the Oromo government's is horizontal, multi-layered structure that she calls supra-local, and I think that has similar relationship to the kind of horizontal structure of governance that I'm talking about when my class was produced. So that's the class. But, this is a big but. What are the problems with this new network approach of education? Because I encountered many problems. Well, first, it is less stable. And it is less stable in all sorts of different ways. For instance, only a month before my class began, the Mekane Jesus Church decided to split from the Lutheran Church over highly politicized questions about the status of women and homosexuals. The Mekane Jesus Church also had begun a relationship with an organization based in Germany that also had an interest in developing its own film program. Instead of mutual collaboration, we discovered that we were competing with this German organization. Part of this competition resulted in a difference of opinion about the goals of film studies. My approach to film and media is secular, not religious. But Mekane Jesus desired a purely religious approach that, in my opinion, did not fully address the global history of film or the realities of film as a business, or even the nature of film, the way it actually works. In mid-semester, we had to shift our class from Mekane Jesus to Rift Valley College, and we're really grateful to Rift Valley College for that, for helping us out. Thinking about these problems in terms of the theory that I mentioned earlier, we can see how mediascapes, ideoscapes, ethnoscapes, technoscapes, and financescapes are all in the background of the various ad hoc partnerships with contradictory aims. The structure of globalization, and hence the structure of global education, is not simple, it is not monologic, and not even dialectical. Rather, it is multiple. The multiplicity of scapes that theorist Arjun Appadurai talks about. A feature of this structure is not only small conflicts at the micro level, but also simply a difference in focus, agenda, and directionality. Another problem for the class is accreditation. Colleges are all part of a national system that monitors their performance and measures them against national standards. Since our class is a transnational class, the Ethiopian students were not part of any national assessed college. So the question of what such a course means is the absence of national standards, and accreditation is still unclear. This affects the motivation of the students inside Ethiopia to actually do the work, and most of our students there had other jobs and other issues that affected their ability to keep pace with the American students. Also affecting the motivation was the language barrier and access to technology. So those are some of the problems. We are hoping to do more classes such as this in the future, and the reason why I wanted to bring this to your attention is to get input from you and advice from you about how we can improve. So thank you very much. So now the student in this class, Arietta, will give a presentation.
Hello everyone, my name is Arietta Laika, and I'm a rising sophomore at Wagner College, where I study literature, political science, and journalism. Thank you all for having me today, and thank you Dr. Thomas for inviting me to be a part of this panel. When I took Dr. Thomas's class on film, media, and globalization in Ethiopia, I realized how misinformed a lot of Americans are about Ethiopia and Africa in general. Dr. Thomas asked my class, what images come to your mind when I mention Ethiopia? Top answers were starving people, deserts, ancient civilizations, and some with their lions in there. American media rarely mention Ethiopia, and if they did, they show tribes and emaciated children. It's hard to find American or even European films that create a positive image for Africa. Just glancing at IMDb's list of best films about Africa, there's Blood Diamond, The Last King of Scotland, and Hotel Rwanda. Films about corruption, genocide, and oppressive regimes. Of course, these films contain a tragic and important message, but they distort the truth about these individual countries, let alone the entire continent. Since Obama's tour in Africa a month ago, some American media outlets have taken up the notion of Africa rising and how it can be the next global success due to its vast resources. Prior to his tour, however, most media coverage of Africa typically consisted of murder, famine, and Congolese rebels. O'Pride and Dr. Thomas's class were both platforms that broke down these negative perceptions and gave a more honest outlook on some African countries through multiple perspectives outside of Western media. Dr. Thomas introduced us to African films such as the Senegalese film Fakine and Ethiopian films Teza and Jeans and Mardo. These simple yet intimate films introduced my class to a wide range of African cultures and societies. In order to show us an example of modern African culture, Dr. Thomas showed us the film Fakine. Semben Osman, also known as the father of African cinema, directed Fakine. Osman's films primarily capture the politics and rapidly changing aspects of African society. Although it's not an Ethiopian film, I think it's a good film that offers a more promising view of Africa and, most importantly, progressive African women. Westernized perceptions, however, can't disappear at once. I'm doing this presentation, my brother comes over to me and he's like, what is Africa society really like? And I think you should watch the movie Blood Diamond. It's my favorite movie, and I think it's a good representation of Africa. So I show him the Fakine trailer, and there's 3 women sitting at a table gossiping at a restaurant, and he's like, wow, this is like Sex in the City. Fakine takes place in Senegal, post-colonialism, and focuses on Kine. Before she becomes pregnant, Kine was studying law, but was forced to drop out because her professor impregnated her. Despite this corruption that exists in her society, Kine later becomes a powerful, wealthy woman who is widely respected by the men she works with. She also does a good job of raising her kids without a husband. Fakine celebrates feminism while criticizing patriarchy and the stereotypes of African women. Kine is quite liberal not only for a Senegalese woman, but is far more liberal than most American women. Kine openly discusses contraceptives and abortions that many American women still refrain from talking about. It also presents a self-made African woman that our media will never show. Many young African filmmakers attempt to follow Osman's path, but foreign films dominate the African film industry. Due to monopolies, American, European, and Indian companies continue to exploit African film distribution, which is why we don't have American-made films like Fakine representing areas of Africa. Thus, we have films about conflict and instability, which allows us to place their culture so far away from our own, hindering our ability to understand and recognize the human experience. The widely respected Ethiopian and American film Teza, directed by Haley Grima, which I actually met yesterday, depicts the horrifying aspects of Colonel Mengistu's regime. Although Teza is a movie about African tragedy, it's not another film about a war-torn country. The film isn't merely about politics or Ethiopia. It's much more poetic and focuses on a man's individual decisions and the loss of one's homeland. Anne Berber, the main character, represents Africa's intellectuals who sought opportunity in the West. He battles white racism and the backlash against colonialism. Through his emotions, we can connect the narrative to our own experiences. Teza takes us back and forth between Ethiopia and Germany. We see the history of the Red Terrors entirely through Anne Berber's perspective. In the beginning of the film, we see Anne Berber in operation room with no explanation. The viewer is forced to figure out his story and piece together his life through his scattered memories. When he returns to his motherland, Anne Berber hopes to find himself in a post-revolutionary Ethiopia, but instead finds himself in the midst of a raging war between the people and its government. Teza ultimately focuses on Anne Berber's struggle in 2 different countries with 2 different mindsets. The film contains an indirect message to people of all countries and backgrounds, the sense of displacement and the importance and impact of staying close to your roots and country. My family immigrated from Montenegro in the mid-1980s. However, I do have a lot of family members from Albania and Kosovo. Whether they left Albania because of immense poverty or left Kosovo as war refugees, no matter how comfortable your life is here or no matter how many opportunities you have, your mind never fully leaves your homeland. And I think that's a message a lot of people can relate to no matter what country they immigrate to. Another film that takes on the idea of balancing 2 different worlds and understanding the current environmental conditions in Africa and Ethiopia is a documentary, Jeans and Mardo, which was presented at the 2013 African Film Festival. The film Jeans and Mardo focuses on life events of Roba Bolga, an Oromo man of Karayu descent who leaves his traditional pastoralist village in Fantale to pursue his education. Some of you may be familiar with Roba Bolga because Muhammad interviewed him for a No Pride article. By attending a university in Addis Ababa, Roba immerses himself into a more modern lifestyle. Although Roba is more educated and familiar with urban life, Roba remains respectful of his pastoral culture, and this is shown before he enters his village when he switches out of his modern jeans into his traditional mardo. While the film does focus on blending traditional and modern culture, it heavily emphasizes the condition of farming and globalization in Ethiopia. In Roba's village, we see endless desert and emaciated animals. There's a lack of water due to the developing plantations near Roba's village that seep water full of pesticides through the village, ultimately killing their livestock. Because there are few resources, land is even scarcer, conflicts emerge, which results in the death of Roba's brother, Gilo Bulga. In order to improve the environmental conditions in Ethiopia, Roba realized that he must start with his own culture first. His education later allows him to obtain a job in slow food and learn more about the environmental conditions in Ethiopia and other parts of the world. Roba's knowledge helps his family combine traditional agriculture practices with modern forms of agriculture, such as organic farming. Many people outside of Africa are unaware that these drought and famine-like conditions are a result of man-made innovation. The media shows images of Africans suffering from immense famine, but don't care to explain the cause of it. Large powers that constantly intervene to supposedly help are destroying land in Africa. Viewing these societies with the notion of under-differentiation disturbs these environments because depending on the type of land, agricultural practices vary throughout the world. And because of the panel on land and globalization in Ethiopia, I'm not going to get into all the technical terms, but a lot of people in the West assume, well, Africans are always starving, their governments are corrupt, but a lot of this is due to outside forces. And they also say ethnic conflicts have always emerged. And now we can see, because Roba's brother died because there are so many little resources, shows that ethnic conflicts didn't really exist, and it's due to intervention. High powers will not fix these problems because they are solely affecting Ethiopian people. Instead of it becoming a global issue, devastation becomes an issue that exists only in borders. Coverage of Africa in Western journalism can be extremely limited, often vague and simply incorrect. The only way to really develop a proper analysis on specific circumstances in this continent would be through alternate forms of media, hence social media. We're all aware of the benefits of social media and online journalism and also the disasters they can create. Mohammed spoke to our class regarding OPRIDE's work covering human rights, systematic oppression of the Oromo people, and ultimately giving Oromos a space. He also discussed the heavy censorship in Ethiopia and how he's able to reach a lot of Ethiopians through social media. He also discussed all the difficulties online journalism poses, issues that journalists today are still learning how to deal with. For example, social media allows you to obtain a first-hand witness, but who do you consider a valid source? How do you know this image isn't photoshopped? Will other forms of outlet take this source seriously? So all of these aspects appeal to me since I'm an aspiring journalist. I started interning with OPRIDE to gain a better understanding of online journalism. As an intern, I edit, format, update social media, crowdsource, and fact-check. A few weeks ago, I wrote a longer analysis on Obama's tour in Africa, Obama 2.0 in Africa. It's all business. Looking at Obama's African tour as well as the economic rationales behind his belated engagement with the growing continent. Working for OPRIDE has also allowed me to expand my knowledge concerning the Horn of Africa and the Oromo region. Between contributors and commenters, I've come to admire the Oromos for their endless persistence and developing voice. OPRIDE presents a wide range of Oromo perspectives and opinions. Interning for OPRIDE has given me insight on the Oromo struggle that I would have never obtained from traditional media. As discussed, the films I watched in class helped me establish a firm understanding of Africa and Ethiopia's history of modern yet traditional culture. As a student, I think it's imperative that we all strive to acknowledge the individual stories that empower Africa and not let Western media completely devise these narrow expectations we have for the continent. Thank you.
This panel was given exactly 1 hour, and that means we have exactly 7 minutes for questions. So if anybody has any questions or comments, please do that question thing. Yes, back over there. I don't. No, yeah, way back. Yeah, yeah. You have to. Yeah, both of you. Yeah. First you and then you.
Okay. Thank you very much for this information. It's really very informative. I have one question. Have you guys heard about the Lost Boys? The Lost Boys of South Sudan?
Oh, yeah.
That film did increase the awareness of the world.
Yeah.
Is there any plan to do something similar to that on Oromia? In case you plan, please make it Oromia, the Forgotten Nation.
That's a good
Thank you.
title. I have 10 minutes, not 7? Awesome. No,
you.
that's, I think that's exactly The Lost Boys of Sudan, and also there was a novel called What is the What that I think, and I like your title, so that's good.
Thank you so much for the opportunities. I'd like to start my comment or question with the fact and hard work that's going around. I am Oromo first, which is a hard and persistent work of Muhammad and others to persistently asking to be heard, and finally came on Al Jazeera. And also I appreciate the work that all of you doing. And my question is, a lot of young and educated guys are around to join the media, and also there's a lot of people trying to help. Muhammad tried to mention maybe lack of time. He did not clearly give how we can contribute to what you guys are doing. And is there any specific ways that we can contribute? It could be financially to just keep you to sustain what you're doing. There's a lot of medias that radios came on air and then finally diminished. To have the consistency, what can we do? Thank you so much.
Let me answer that in Oromo. I'm struggling with English. I hope the non-Oromo speakers won't mind. Waan jiru, I think Oromoon qabeenyas humna namaatis, nama barates, warra kaanii gad hanqoon qabu. Rakkoon nu keessa jiru walitti dhufnee waliin waa hojjechuu dadhabuudha. Kanaan achi immoo anaa sirra caalaa fi tanaaf garuma garaan deddeemanii waan walakkama bilchaate takka dhadhaabuu jira. San hafee wanti gochuun qaba Oromoon hundi walitti dhufee waan namni Oromoo hundi keessatti uf arguu danda'u waan waloodha. Tagaranaas tagarasiis qabaan qabne gad dhaabbachuun nurra jira. Sabni sabaa hima hin qabne, saba afaan hin qabne. Afaan Oromoo amma arkannee jirraa qabsoo wareegama qaaliin itti dhufteen. Garuu afaan Oromoo tun taguddattu yoo ittiin barraahe, yoo ittiin hojjetame. Ka ittiin hojjetame barraa'u immoo yoo sabaa himni jiraate. Kanaaf kan gochuu akkamitti irraa hirmaanna ka jetteefi warri waa barreessurraa fedhii fi anjaa akkasii qaban. Email fi hundaa wachirra keenya jirra. Some of you guys have already written for Opride. Folks like Mohammed Hassan, Dr. Asfa and others. We always welcome your contribution. There are so many Oromo doctors. What is the problem? Why can't people write op-eds on their area of expertise and add the Oromo voice to the conversation? There are so many non-Oromo doctors and activists who are writing day in and day out, but the Oromo voice is not there. You can write and send us your contribution. We'll be happy to publish that. And then the other thing is when we launch this media organization, you can join by being a board member. You can take a local initiative and organize fundraising in your local, wherever you live. And then the other thing we are trying to do is, if we can raise $1,000 from 100 Oromos, that is $100,000. Now, I understand $1,000 is a lot of money, but each and every one of you guys have 5 friends. Collect $200 from your 5 friends and put that forward. That is $1,000. Put that forward, and if we can do that for 100 people, that is $100,000. We can do more than that. There are more than 100 Oromo businesses who can contribute $1,000. If we can do that, we can start a Monday to Friday radio show on satellite focusing on Oromia, covering Oromia with journalists on the ground and also from outside. What we really need to do is be a little bit more serious. These fragmented things we run around and I do it after I get off my job, that's not going to cut it. What we need is a studio with dedicated journalists, and we have a lot of support to do that, including in mainstream media, where they've already shown interest to link to our work and also feature some of our work on their platforms. But in order for that to happen, we all need to really step back and stop focusing just on politics. There is more to being Oromo than just politics. So we have, I think that's what we need to do, and then we can talk specifically how you can be part of it.
I'd like to add to that in addition to all the talent that is here in this room and across the United States, Canada, and other countries, there's also an incredible amount of talent that is underutilized back home in Oromia, right? I think, Daba, that's what you're trying to tap and use. So I'm going to invite you to discuss how we might help finance and bring that talent out. So I'm yeah.
Tole afaan Oromootiin hin dubbadha. Waan sa'a amma geenyu yookaan amma bal'annu yookaan amma guddannu yookaan amma horii qabnu yookaan amma dandeettii qabnu tun ta'in akkaataa itti of himannu akkaataa itti eenyu akka fakkaannu ofittis nama biraattis agarsiisnudha kan murteessu. Amma fedhe amma nu miliyoona ammas jenna namni waan akkasii nu dhaggeeffatu iyyuu hin jiru. Amma barri yeroon isaa darbeera maal arginaadha namni personalized stories image seenaa waan argamudha kan namni barbaadu. Ofuma keenyaayyuu waan gad nu deebi amma guyyaa guyyaatti waa'ee nama du'ee raasaa deemnu lapheen koo cabaadhuma deema yeroo tokko tokko hirriba koottuu natti dhufa yeroon halkan ka'e sana deebi'ee yaadu. Waan immoo dhalootaaf keenyu dhaloonni ni dandeenya nu jabaadha nu beekna nama kaanirraa yoo darbine amma namoonni kaan tarii Oromoo irratti waan hammeenyaa qabaachuu danda'u nu immoo sanarra dabarreetu nuyi siniif jaalala qabna garuu yaadni keessan sirrii miti nuti akkasin baddan hin barbaannu garuu waan hojjettan kun sirrii miti dhaabaa kan jechisiisu jiraachuu danda'utu irra jira nuyi akka inni duraan dubbate warri yaada nu yaadnu kana hin barbaanne yaadanii ol deemuu danda'u nurra jira isaaniif deebisaa oolla taanaani sanuma deebii isaaniin deebisu nu hin deebisna isaaniin deebisu nu hin deebisna kanuma akkuma ijoollee mana keessaa ol qoccaltuu taanee hafna jechuudha. Kanaaf imeejii uumuu danda'u nurra jira. Sana gochuuf immoo instituushinii barbaachisa. Barnoota barbaachisa. Mee ilaalaa miidiyaan biyyoota adda addaa keessatti akkamitti akka inni sammuu namaa jijjiiru. Waan sun dhugaa ta'uu dhiisuu waan biraadha. Garuu waan namni miidiyaa irraa arge, waan namni fiilmii irraa ilaale, waan namni barreeffama irraa arge dubbisee sammuu namaa keessaan ba'u. Fiilmii yeroo ilaaltan amma waa'ee biyya tokko deemtanii qorattuu dudduuba isaa hin qorattan. Fiilmichuma sana biyyi sun akkas jettanii murteessitaniittu. Fiilmi sana argitee beektaa waa'ee biyya sana akkas jedhameeti kanaa saamu miti. Gabaabaadhumatti yoo ilaaltan fiilmi biyya tokko yookaan seenaa tokko ilaaltanii fiilmichuma ilaaltanii waa'ee biyya sanaa sammuu keessan keessatti hafeera. Deemtanii sobaaf dhugaa ta'uu isaallee hin qorattan. Sun barbaachisaadha jechuudha. Sanarratti hojjechuun nurra jira. Lammata immoo ani maaltu natti dhaga'ama umriin koo amma 40 darbee deemaan jira. Amma sanoolletti deemaa jirra jechuudha. Gaaffiin sammuu koo keessa jiru eenyutu jira kana booda? Eenyutu itti fufuu danda'a? Haa xiqqaatus haa guddatus jiraanneerra. Jireenya ittaanutti eenyutu darbee kana fuudhee deema? Waan ta'uufii koo maalan godha maalan barreessaa miti. Yaaduun nurra jira. Ijoollee Oromiyaa keessa jiran warra iddoo sanarra jiran tarii nu as waan barbaanne dubbannee mootummaa abaaruu dandeenyuu fi nu gaarii jechuu dandeenya garuu ijoollee warra achi keessa jiran warri dhukkuba sana keessa jiran warri rakkoo sana keessa jiran garuu caalaa waa'ee saba isaanii dubbachuu danda'u isaan humneessuu nu barbaachisa isaan barsiisuu nu barbaachisa isaan jabeessuu nu barbaachisa.
All right, I think we're out of time. I'd just like to leave you with one parting thought. It's kind of like a joke.
Can you let him speak since he's from Oromia?
Yes. Somebody hand him the mic.
I felt I would be sinning if I didn't mention Roba's name because Roba is my personal friend. And I have got an ongoing research among the Karayu myself. I'm an anthropologist. And Roba is an embodiment of the Karayu society, the most threatened group. The very existence of the Karayu is threatened by land grabbers. And I'm not commenting on your presentation, but I'm just excited that the name Karayu and Roba come together for these Oromos to witness what's going on over there. And I want everybody to understand that the Karayu as an Oromo group, and I repeat, the Karayu is threatened. They are threatened as a group. Thank you for bringing the Karayu to the attention of this Oromo public. And I am a witness to what is going on there. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
I just wanted to, and I want to add to that, that of the 12 movies that I showed to my class, the favorite, almost all of my students agreed that their favorite movie was Jeans and Marto about Roba's activities. So I hope that makes a difference to you. I'll give you a final comment, but I just want to make a joke, except it's not a joke. It actually happened. So you know those like 3 men walk into a bar jokes? So 3 men walk into a bar. A Marxist, that's me. An evangelical Christian, that's Daba. And a Rastafarian, who's not here. What do they talk about? Politics? Beer? No. Evangelical Christians don't talk about beer. We talk about the movies. These are the stories that give us something to talk about and help us think about the future.
Thank you, Dr. Gambacho. I just wanted to say that Roba, he's an embodiment. You are absolutely right. Spending 2 days with Roba in New York was something very special. And I wanted to say, for those of you guys who don't know Roba Jilo Bulga is a Karayu young man, 27 years old, who escapes from arranged marriage a week before he was supposed to be married, and becomes homeless in Finfinne, and goes on to Addis Ababa University and graduate with honors and get a scholarship, go to Italy and do his master's and go back. While he had all the opportunities just like the rest of us, he went back, not just stay in Finfinne, he started a nonprofit organization in Karayu trying to help his community. And he has done so much for himself, for his family, for the Karayu, and for the great Oromo community. And for those of you guys who are interested, I interviewed him and wrote a piece called With Love from Karayu. Look it up on Google, With Love from Karayu. And he's, by the way, looking for a sponsor to come back, show his films to Oromo community. And I think for those of you guys who have children who grew up in this country, they can learn a great deal from Roba's story of going back, and also how he's dealing between in modernity and tradition, in balancing by not losing touch with his roots, still wearing his marto, but also wearing his jeans. And if the Oromo community is interested in something like that, please talk to me, and Roba is certainly receptive to that idea.